Hallo Anna und herzlich willkommen zu meinem Podcast. Ich bin sehr freut zu dich haben auf der Podcast. So yes, welcome to the podcast. I'm very excited to have you. That was my best attempt at remembering what I Google translated a few minutes earlier.
Oh, sehr gut. Ich habe dich gut verstehen. Es war gut. I can't promise my German is great either.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Should at least be a fair bit better than mine. But yeah, so I've been looking forward to this for a while. I've had you on my list of potential guests for a while now because I know you've had a pretty interesting experience learning German, and this podcast has mostly been centered around like French recently because I know a lot of people who have had experience learning and even teaching French. I interviewed my French teacher
Yeah.
a couple episodes ago. So yeah, I thought this would be an interesting change to throw in a very, very, very different language and a new and exciting person. So I've got a few questions. I wrote a bunch of stuff down, but we can stick more or less to that. But yeah, anything you have to say will be welcome. So for our listeners, can you just give yourself a quick introduction? Just tell us what your experience is, who you are.
Yeah. My name is Anna. I have been studying German for 4 years now. I began with a pretty intermediate course that covered half of what I later covered in my first year of taking German pretty intensely. I took that 1 year, and then the year after I took my first half of the semester. So first semester in my regular German class, and then I went on an exchange to Germany in 2020. It was supposed to be 3 months, but that was cut short due to the pandemic, and so I only ended up spending about 2. And then I came back. This year I was transferred into a bilingual class, and I'm not going to say I'm bilingual because I'm not, but I did end up taking my Sprachdiplom, which, if you're familiar with the European framework of languages, goes from I took the B1, B2 exam. I don't know if I passed yet, but we're hoping. So that's where I'm at with languages.
That's pretty great. You're totally bilingual. Like, even if you're taking an exam for B1 or B2, that's like 100%. Like, you're bilingual, if not trilingual, just because of your prior French experience, even if you can't remember a lot of it. But
yeah, I can understand a lot of French, like a weird amount of French. I can understand it. And apparently I speak in this really weird mix of quite thick Quebec accent because all of my teachers, I didn't mention this before, but I was in elementary Quebec French immersion, or just French immersion, for grade 1 to grade 6, and a lot of my teachers were either Franco-Albertain or from rural areas of Quebec. And so we do have, from that school, most of us have a pretty thick French accent. And then also, like, there was no French influence, which, as my siblings who are still in French immersion would tell you, as you go up into like higher levels of education in French immersion, you get a lot more teachers from who speak French. So yeah, weird relationship with French.
Yeah, I used to have a Quebecois teacher in French immersion, but that was a long time ago, and now I've mostly got most of my exposition from like France, so my accent changed quite a lot, I think. But anyways, like, so what made you choose German? Why did that stand out to you? How was it exciting?
Well, I have distant relatives, so cousins, aunts, and uncles who are still in Germany. And at least my parents have met and communicate pretty regularly with. There's a lot of really old kind of family heirloom books that are all written in German. Particularly my great-grandfather has a lot of his life's work was writing and evangelism, and a lot of that was in German, and just kind of being able to read that stuff. I'm a bit of a history nerd, and so having access to those documents and just being able to understand it was really cool for me. Other than that, I wanted to learn a language that was hmm, I wanted to learn something that would allow me to better understand English and to better understand other languages from Europe and that whole kind of area and explore that deeper.
Oh yeah, I love that. It's kind of the same with me, but I was looking for something to kind of contrast that would contrast my against French, like
Mhm.
something that would be just a polar opposite almost. So I actually went
Yeah.
online. I looked up what are the hardest languages for French speakers to learn. And so number
Yeah.
one was Mandarin Chinese, but I was like, I'm not ready for that yet. I don't want to go there. But then
Mhm.
I saw German, and it's actually not super hard for English speakers, but it's like very hard for French speakers, and
Yeah.
vice versa as well. It's very difficult for a native German speaker to learn French. So I thought that would be kind of interesting
Mhm.
to kind of get that opposite perspective, like something that's just super different. And oh wow, German's been way different than French. It has not been. It has not disappointed. It's probably it's
Yeah.
French is probably closer to English than German is, honestly, by this point. Even if they're more closely related is in a language family, then like, oh, German word order is what messes with me.
Yeah. I think that's totally like I totally get that with the like at least when I was in Germany, we took French classes
Oh,
and just the contrast between how many cases there are in French and all of the spellings, which don't make a lot of sense compared to German, which is written mostly phonetically, broke all of our minds collectively.
yeah, yeah. It's such a weird contrast. Because yeah, I heard that German is very like phonetically written, but then French you have like half the word is silent letters.
Yeah.
I didn't know what those all meant until like quite a few years after. Like, why do you put a bunch of extra words on here? It doesn't. You don't say them any differently. Um. Uh. When did you decide to go to Germany? Was that like after you decided to learn German, or were you like, oh, here's an opportunity to go to Germany, better learn some German? Like, uh,
I was learning German prior to even
yeah.
hearing about the exchange. I think I decided the choosing to go on the exchange was a really big decision for me because it meant that because I'm bound to the public system of education, it meant I was sacrificing my second semester of that year, which meant that whereas regularly I could have gotten maybe all three sciences, biochem, math is not a science, but technically it is. Biochem, physics, I didn't end up getting all those in. And so it means that I I kind of lowered some of my things, but I gained a lot. Like I would not trade it for the world, but I sacrificed. I that whole summer before I did summer school and missed spending time with relatives that I don't have the chance to see anymore. And it's yeah, it was tough to get there, but I'm very happy I did it.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Switching continents for 2 months.
Yeah.
Mm.
Or yeah, and then it wasn't so bad because it was only 2 months, but had it been 3 as it was originally intended, I think it would have been way more impactful on my schoolwork and trying to keep up with what I did have in that semester. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've been thinking about going to Quebec this summer. Well, I applied for, but it's a draw, so I have no idea whether or not
Mhm.
I get to go. But I'm just fingers crossed. I'm hoping like that I get to go. But it'll be in the summer, so it probably won't have that big of an effect. But I might have to miss some stuff with my family, which might be
Yeah.
yeah, which I might miss. But
Mhm.
I think yeah, that's definitely worth doing. Exploring a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. Like,
Broaden your horizons.
yeah.
Um, so what would you say your level was before you went on this exchange? Like,
Ooh, I would say spoken German. I was probably around, so I'll use the European framework, but I'll also like say things like colloquially, whatever. Um, So I would probably say I was about an A1.5 going, which realistically means you can talk about where and what is in your bedroom and some very basic phrases, but you can say those phrases pretty well. In terms of written and like comprehending and just reading and that kind of stuff, I was much further back. I tend to in languages be really drawn to just speaking and understanding, and I can do that quite well. But in terms of reading and writing, I lag behind a bit. When I or that was my initial thing, and then coming back, was that part of the question? Coming back or just
Sure, yeah, why not?
okay, okay. Yeah. We, sorry.
That was a
Um
question. It was just a different one.
yeah. And then coming back, I felt like my comprehension, so the comprehension, reading, writing, all that stuff I had been lagging behind on just shot through the roof. I think I didn't learn a ton of new like vocabulary per se, but the flexibility and the way I was able to use my tiny arsenal of tools went way up.
That's awesome. Yeah, so you found the immersive experience to kind of like your brain kind of adapted to it a bit more, or would you say, or you just got used to it? Um,
I was able to, so in a classroom setting, often you're using words and stuff that are very formal, like how are you doing? I'm fine. How are you? But no one really has conversations like that. If you want to have a real conversation with someone, that involves learning slang and social cues and adapting to that person's culture and what they believe is what they think you're trying to say through body language and what you're saying through body language and those kinds of aspects of a language that are really hard to teach in a classroom. So that's what I learned
yeah, so
from
I'm
exchange.
guessing, yeah, you kind of pick up on the informal spoken language a lot quicker. Yeah,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I've heard that that people who tend to be more introverted can learn the formal language quite easily and pick up on grammar and stuff and read, but then like
Mhm.
when it comes to informal, like very like extroverted people tend to excel because they just want to chat with people, and um, they can really excel in just communicating with any person on the street, um,
Mhm.
and being able to understand people just talking casually like they would in any everyday situations.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing I learned about. Um, so so was it a scary experience kind of going there? Like, I mean, it's not like you could bring your family with you. You're on your
Mhm.
own. And like, I've never gone anywhere without my family. Like, so how was that? Was that an exciting experience?
It was thrilling. I guess I've never gone like skydiving, but it felt a bit like what it kind of is described as by some people. Like it is very terrifying, especially in the beginning, and kind of like really disorienting, especially like again, I hadn't traveled without my family before, and I hadn't traveled out of North America, and even the places I have traveled in North America, it was all English speaking and it was all pretty much the same culture. Um, for context, I went to like urban centers of California when I was much younger, and that's the only out of Canada travel I've done. And then even in Canada, that was just Western Canada. So going to a place where the culture is so amazingly different, the little things like culture shock, especially in Europe, I don't know how it would be inside of a place that was much closer, but the little things throw you off so much. You're kind of expecting this little hurdle of homesickness, but it kind of is drawn out, or for me it was. I know people who it was very quick, it passed in like a week, but I had that homesickness kind of with me for quite a while. So it was hard, but it became really exciting quite quickly.
Yeah, that's pretty okay. So, now that you're back, like, what are your plans? Do you think now that you spent all that time learning German, like, what's the big like? Do you think, of course, even just to have that skill is going to be a massive
Mhm.
advantage, even if you like? I find like learning a language is always worth it, even if you never travel anywhere, because they're always going to be like, if I find all the time when you're in an English speaking region, you're in your own like hometown or whatever, and you meet someone who
Mm-hmm.
is from that place and you can start speaking their language, then they're
Yes.
going to instantly bond with you because they're like, you spent all that
Mm-hmm.
time like learning that language. But um, do you have any, but besides that, do you have any plans for your new German skills?
Well, I would love to go back. I want to go back so much because, okay, this is kind of a little bit of a detail, but whatever. Um, on the exchange, part of that was we were going to go to Berlin and see all of these historical sites and things like this, the Stasi or the spy museum from East Germany and um, all of these really cool things that I didn't get a chance to do. That as well as I only stayed in, well, my exchange family and I had planned to travel more throughout the country later in the exchange, but we didn't get a chance to do that. And so even though I was in Germany for 2 months, I really just got to know my local area, which is beautiful, but there's so much I didn't see. So my plan is to go back. I also really want to take the applications I've learned in like speaking German and try to apply those to other aspects of German dialects. So, um, ideally, I this is kind of just like a little personal thing, but I thought it would be cool to learn Plattdeutsch
Oh
or
yeah.
yeah, just because that's what's spoken by our local German communities, which they aren't open, but that's what like our the I'm assuming I haven't done any research on this, but if someone's coming from one of those communities, low German is what the influence is, and that's what a lot of probably even like old immigrant German is as well. So I'm hoping to learn more dialects and just go back, but travel is expensive and not
Yeah.
really running right now, so nothing in the future.
Yeah, yeah, it's the same with me. I've always been really interested in learning the other dialects, and especially since in school all I learn is Parisian French.
Mhm.
Whereas, like, I'd probably, I mean, I'm not entirely sure because I don't know how much, I don't know that much about France. I haven't looked into it as much as like Quebec, but like I'd probably choose to go to Quebec over France just for the experience, just to discover like
Mhm.
Canada a little bit more, like because I haven't even explored it very much, and it's the country I live in, so I'd like to get to
Yeah.
know it a little bit better. So I've been trying to learn Québécois French because, and all of my Franco-Albertain friends here, like, and you know you know them from our Jasper trips.
Yeah, yeah.
So like when I talk to them, they say that I talk like a Parisian or like I'm from
Mhm.
France. That I have this very strong like European French accent, and like and then they're speaking this like Canadian variety, and we had some misunderstandings, like because their like meal order, like words for meals are different. So
Mhm.
I was using the France version, and I said that I hadn't had my déjeuner yet, but then
Oh, yeah.
so that is breakfast here, but in
Mhm.
France that's lunch. So I meant I hadn't had lunch, and they're like, "What? You haven't had your breakfast yet?" And I was like, "What? Of course I haven't had my déjeuner yet. It's like it's only." But so that was a little confusing. Of course, we can still
Mhm.
communicate, but I'd like to be able to have that like cultural fluency as well, and like
Yeah.
understand the dialect to avoid misunderstandings, but also just to connect a little bit more, like in that like their not just their language, but like their little like their dialect.
Yeah.
So I've always been interested in that too. Um, so what would you say were your best memories from what you did get to experience in Germany? And like, yeah, how was that?
Hmm. I think the top 3 things are all pretty different. So the first one I've gotta say was, like, just generally best experience. In my school in Germany, there was this English for second language students, and it was basically a lot of the kids so if you're familiar with the politics of the area, the migration crisis caused a lot of immigration from other countries, and then that in turn caused immigration from Southern European countries, EU countries, and then just as the general trend of the EU is, people from the East migrate west. So lots of kids from so many different backgrounds, and all of them, we were all learning German at our own paces, and just a community of learners in something that you couldn't even have here. It was just so much fun to be able to talk and have these conversations that were like, we are people who are here and we're kind of from different cultures, and how do our experiences change and do that and have that in German, and just like that camaraderie between us was really deep. I think that was probably one of my favorite experiences from just um like daily life like that. I looked forward to that class so much. Um and then the other one was, there was this I wouldn't know if you wouldn't call it a castle, but you'd call it, I guess maybe like a country house from around the time of Napoleon. And oh my goodness, like the German countryside is covered with these things, and they are beautiful. It was the most ornament thing I've ever seen coming from Western Canada. We have nothing that's older than like 100 and something years, or very few buildings that are more than 100 years old. There, they have buildings that are like 400 years old, and it's just kind of like, that's our local castle, and it's like, what? That's mind-blowing. So those are my two biggest highlights, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm so excited to just check things out a little bit more. But yeah, especially since we in Western Canada, all our oldest buildings are maybe 100 years. But even if you go to Eastern Canada, and it goes
Yeah.
back 400 years, like
Hmm.
all the way back to the first. So like old Quebec, it's about supposed to be 400 years older, so
Yeah.
1600s. So I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, Germany, and especially just Europe in general, it's just such an older, like it's such an
Hmm.
older culture, and an older, just like it's an older place as far as, I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
if you get what I mean.
One of my social teachers once said that some people, I forget which people's exactly, but thought that time went down and up instead of forward and backwards, right? Like we in English, we think about time as like you jump forward in time, you go back in time.
Yeah,
In some other cultures, some other languages, you think of going down in time and up in time. And thinking about that, like I didn't really understand it here, but going to Europe and then coming back, I really understood it because it feels, I don't know what it is, but it just feels, the land feels way more lived on. It feels older. And when you come here, it feels newer. I don't know why. Maybe
yeah.
that's just me. But like the longer, I don't know what it is, but it's just a feeling, you know?
Yeah, I've often wondered about like kind of the psychological effects of experiencing other cultures, but also learning those languages. And like,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much research and like studies saying that like these things like are shaped by and shape the way we think. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
as just going back to time, like I watched one video and it said that apparently in one culture, well, so here in English, if we drew a timeline, we draw it left to right, right? Because
Yeah.
that's just how our words flow. But and if you're speaking Arabic or Hebrew, you'd go right to left, and that's where your time
Huh.
goes. And then this gets even weirder. And there was this one culture, I don't even think they had a written language, and but they didn't have lefts and rights. They had cardinal direction, so north, south, east,
Mm-hmm.
west. So their time, no matter which way they were facing, it always went the same way. They draw this timeline going like the same way, so it went like east, west, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or north south, and then no matter which way they were facing, they'd always draw the timeline the same way, whether it's coming towards them or going beside them. So yeah,
That
is
is so cool.
so I found that really interesting. um so yeah, I love that. And yeah, just talking about about that English as a second language class, I've always uh thought about that too, and if I was really interested, because I was really interested when you said that, because your backgrounds might have been so different, but the one thing that kind of um, that kind of brought you together, united you, was this shared experience of learning this
Mm-hmm.
language. Even if your native languages could be come from like opposite sides of the world or be spoken there, then even just this bridge, like that's the only thing you had in common,
Mm-hmm.
but it was enough to kind of to have a bit of a bond even from the start, which is what I really
Yeah.
love about languages, and I feel like that's at sometimes the core of the benefits of learning a language is just making that connection. Which, yeah, I've only been able to do that on a smaller scale because I haven't met with anyone that in a long time that just doesn't speak English, right? Anyone I talk
Mm-hmm.
to is gonna speak English, but
Everyone speaks English,
yeah.
especially in the places where the languages are easiest to learn. Like everyone in Western Europe speaks like English, probably, or the people you're going to be interacting with, right? Like it's really just your, at least in Germany, I found. I was in a really rural area too. Most people had some grasp of English, and it was really only your omas and opas and maybe your people who are working jobs where they maybe didn't learn it. People who are like 40, 50 years old who didn't learn it in school, but everyone coming up, no matter what level of education you're doing, is learning some level of English. And then on top of that, you have music. All music is in English. I was going there on the radio, like the majority of it was English. Everyone listens to English pop music. Everyone watches English TV. Like it's so dominating. It's hard to get away from.
Yeah, that's crazy because then, like, like the producers of all this content is coming from a very specific culture, uh, and so like that they're not even getting to experience their own culture in a way that's becoming their culture, but like they're not producing this stuff because I mean,
Mm-hmm.
some of them maybe are. Some people with German as a native language might choose to say, write a song in English, and then that's part of their culture. But I feel like a lot of it is just coming from somewhere else, and which is
Yeah.
fine to an extent. Like it's good to experience these cultures, but I feel like when it's
Mm-hmm.
all just coming from the same place, it becomes a little bit, it's just
Yeah. Or German artists writing in right ger, German artists writing in English is what I forget. I was listening to an interview with a guy from Iceland saying that when he had started music, the majority of Icelandic content being produced was English because you couldn't get a domestic Icelandic market for whatever you were doing. And I think honestly, with so many languages, that's the case. I mean, you can make something in Cree, you can make something in whatever language you speak at home,
but no one's
but
gonna listen to it, or not enough people.
you're not going to be able to make a consistent career out of it,
Yeah.
which is in a lot of these things difficult for people.
But it's not always a bad thing. In some places, it's very uh, logical and effective to um, just to be able to have that medium to have a market at all, right? Because
Oh yeah,
that way,
absolutely.
if you write in English, then you're going to get way more people listening to your
Mhm.
unique creation than if you were just making it for this small group of people, which is good too. But yeah, I feel like it's good to have that lingua franca,
Mhm.
so someone from France can communicate to a German speaker and not necessarily have to, or because everything's so close together, so many different languages, you can't learn them
Yeah.
all, right? But you can learn one.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, it's not the same level of connection, and you don't get so close to that culture. And
Yeah.
one remark that my French teacher and my interview with him made was that you're not just becoming bilingual, you're becoming bicultural, which I
Yes, I
really
heard
liked.
that.
So yeah, I really enjoyed that comment.
Mhm.
So and I've been experiencing that for myself because one of my favorite things about learning a language is, um, like I said, even if you never speak to someone who uses it, there's always going to
Mhm.
be um, the effects. So for example, like I listen to French music a lot, and so
Yeah.
like sometimes even the cultural trends, like in Quebec or in France, like they're gonna affect me too now because I'm able to receive that because I can understand and I've connected with another culture, even if I wasn't born into that culture. Maybe I don't understand it as well as those people who are like a part of it, but at least I'm connected to it even if I'm not a part of it. So
Yeah.
and I can understand a little bit better like what their trends are, what their music is like, what their movies are like, and it's been really cool, and it's super fun. It's just so fun. People say, "Oh, it's not
Mhm.
practical to learn a language because everyone just speaks
Yeah.
English," but it does like that's not even really my goal with learning languages. It's not.
Yeah. And even like in terms of learning another language, we live in an incredibly privileged position in Western Canada and the US going down. Like the majority of people are just expected to learn English. If you live in like anywhere in Europe, most students, especially if they're taking higher level high school courses or even going into university, are learning 3, 4 languages. Like, can you compete with that with just English? No, you can't.
Yeah, it's true.
Internationally, you cannot do anything if you can't speak. I mean, you can, you totally can, but having a second language, just any.
Oh, I can't hear you. Your video's gone. Oh, you're back. You're
Yeah,
back.
something,
Okay.
yeah. Having that second language just shoots you through the roof. I think, to go on a little tangent, in Alberta, we have the Ukrainian village, which you have to be able to speak Ukrainian for. And even though that language probably like it was spoken, it's a native like it's long history in Alberta, but like even though that language isn't necessarily useful, it's a guaranteed summer job for anyone who speaks that language at
Yeah.
home, which is amazing.
Yeah, and like in a time when technology and communication just gets so easy, like, and
Mhm.
quick and fast. I mean, I feel like that just like human connection of even just like speaking the same language and like speaking someone's like native language, not just their second language, which might be English, but then
Mhm.
that gets even more potentially even more valuable. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that's super cool. Um, I heard your sister Sophie told me that she wanted to learn German now. How's that going?
Well, she hasn't started yet. She's
Okay.
currently still in French immersion, so that is going to be very interesting. I know personally, I cannot keep my German and French brain straight. Like, it used to be that I would confuse German words with French words all the time. So if I spoke German, I would use French fill-in words. But currently, if I try to speak French, I use German fill-in words, and it's horrendous because those languages clash so horribly.
Yeah, it doesn't
Um,
work.
I've been trying to learn another language, which is Estonian, and I found learning that language I don't have that problem. So I don't know what it is about German and French, but my brain just thinks they're the same thing. So I don't know how that's going to go for her, but I believe in her. And I
Yeah,
think it helps because like I think anyone who has siblings who speak a second language or a parent would understand when you have someone you can just talk to in that language casually. My sisters will do this sometimes in French. They'll just like, if they don't want me to know what's going on, they'll talk in French instead. And so, by using that tool, you're able to just practice that in a much more practical way, which brings out like just a lot of highlights of the language, gives it an actual functional use in your life.
oh
So I'm
yeah,
happy.
I've been trying to persuade all my siblings to like learn or relearn a second language for pretty much as
Mm-hmm.
long as I've been doing it, because it just sounds so much better just to have like someone in your own household that you can learn it with. Because
Mm-hmm.
like it's kind of frustrating like spending hours learning a language and you're never speaking it, like
Yeah,
you're just talking to yourself. I find myself do that. I'll
exactly.
walk down the street and I'll do my best to have a conversation with myself in German. I'll switch to French, sprinkle a little Hebrew in there, and then I come around a corner and there's someone walking towards me and I just that's always awkward.
I can relate so much.
Ooh,
Oh my
it's happened
goodness.
too many times. Like, just pretend I'm on the phone. But yeah, so
Yeah.
I bet it's just way better to have someone else doing it with you.
Mhm.
But yeah, like my dad's interested in in relearning French and learning Hebrew. So hopefully soon. He's just busy. He's working on a lot of other things that are bigger priorities for him. But I'm just waiting for the day to come when I can practice in my house.
My dad practices occasionally with German, but as far as he's gotten is der Stück, which I'm not even sure if that's grammatically correct. He's got a very limited, like the piece, like ein Stück Brot. He's got that much. He's got like Duolingo done to the first two things. I'm like, oh, he might never get it at this point. He's tries his best, but I don't know.
Yeah. I'm hoping I can, or I'm not going to say that. I am going to stick with it. But yeah, so Mama und Papa haben mir einen neuen Deutschkurs gegeben, so I'm pretty excited to keep working on that. Got the living language one, which is kind of just super cheap that you find at a bookstore. So, but it's
fine. With German, there's so many good resources. Like you can use whatever course you have, but also the DW Deutsch one is really in depth and covers a lot of things that some courses don't talk about. Like I think even in the first couple, like in the A2 one, they talk about paying rent and dealing with if you like miss your rent, what to do, how to get employment insurance, like just really practical things that would be useful for someone in Germany.
Oh yeah, that's crazy.
So like there are so many, and there are magazines. One of the best things about going to Germany, because they've had this influx of people who don't speak German, but those people who don't speak German don't necessarily all speak a unified language. Some of them speak Arabic, some of them speak whatever the technical name for Persian is. I don't know that one.
I think it's just Persian.
Okay, Persian, or people who speak Croatian at home. Like they're all coming and they need to learn German. So they have these wonderful resources like Deutsch Perfect, and I can't think of many others, but there's so many that are just all German formats for learning German. It is wonderful. It's so great. It's a luxury to be able to learn a language that has so many resources.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's just super exciting because I'm just at the very, very beginning of this process, which I know is only because from my prior experience, especially learning French, it was so hard and annoying at first, but I'm just so excited for this one because I know what's ahead and I know that there's like a whole world of just things to just to discover and places to go and books to read, magazines to read, movies to watch.
You've got it.
Yeah,
it's
gonna be awesome. But I have a feeling Zoom's gonna probably cut us off pretty soon. So there's a 45-minute limit, and I don't know how much time's gone past. But anyways, I hope you are. I hope you're surviving COVID and your Estonian is going good, and as well as you're keeping up with your German, and hope you're finding lots to do, and hopefully we'll get together sometime to do some live practice.
That would be amazing.
But yeah, so hopefully I will. Thanks again for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This was so much fun.
And also, thanks for the photo. If you're working on that, then
absolutely. I was just gonna send it to you.
Oh, that's amazing! I'm so excited to see it. I've just been in suspense the whole time. But anyways, yeah. Well, anyways, auf Wiedersehen. Bis zum nächsten Mal. So, bye.
Bye bye.